Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing my favorite books that I read in 2024. So I read 60 books and I honestly discovered some of my new all-time favorites. So I'm really excited to share them with you today. Before we begin, I'm going to list off some honorable mentions, which were amazing books. I probably gave them like a 4 or a 4.5 stars, but they're not quite 5 stars in my eyes. So the first honorable mention on my list is Behold the Dreamers by Mbolu Mbiu. I apologize in advance. I'm sure I'm butchering that name, but this story is a novel about the American dream. It centers around a family who migrates from Africa to America in pursuit of the American dream. And they began working for an upper class wealthy family that is prominent on Wall Street. And you just see the income disparities, how the American dream pans out in totally different ways for these two different families. And I just think that this novel is a great story of resilience. It's a great story that will widen your perspective and give you an idea of the immigrant experience in America. The next honorable mention is called Lie With Me by Philippe Besson. And this is an extremely poetic novel. I'm usually not one who loves romance, but this did it for me. And it's actually between two young boys in France, I believe. And some of the themes that are talked about in this story are those of identity, are those of romance, are those of our family's expectations and societal expectations that are put on us versus who we truly are deep down authentically. And so highly recommend this novel if you want to read something that's a romance but also delves into identity. Last but not least is a short story, and it's called The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. Now, this story has a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of speculative fiction, which generally is not my jam, but for this short story, it worked. And once again, this kind of talks about the immigrant experience, especially as a first generation American. In this case, it's about a little boy who comes from a Chinese heritage, and it kind of explores how he has to balance this new experience being an American boy and trying to fit in with his classmates versus the experience he has at home with Chinese parents. So highly recommend those. But now we are getting into the 5-star reads, which these are the books that just stole the show. I'm going to go in the order from the ones that I read earlier in the year versus the ones that I read most recently. So the first one is The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugoni. Oh my gosh, you guys. Oh my gosh. I could not put this novel down. I don't think I've ever been this invested in a protagonist like I have Sam Hell. So he is this boy who is born with this condition where he has blood red eyes. And naturally, as you can assume, this causes him to be rejected, to be bullied, to be judged. And so you follow him throughout his life. In a sense, this is kind of a coming of age novel, but there is so much more here. There is, themes of acceptance, of faith, of perseverance, of resilience. And oh my gosh, just the dynamic between him and his parents, him and his friends, him and his lover. And you just see how all of these different relationships shape him. And also, there is a huge spiritual and religious aspect to this novel about trusting God, trusting the process. And this was a story that made me cry over a dozen times. So if you're going to read it, get the tissues ready. You're going to need it. The next one is You Are The Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter by Joe Dispenza. So obviously this is a nonfiction book, completely different. This book focuses on meditation, and it focuses on how we are the placebo, right? So depending on the thoughts we have and the beliefs that we have, we are going to manifest drastically different results. So in this book, you are going to read real life examples of people who were able to heal themselves using meditation. They were able to get cured from things such as cancer, from things that were meant to be lifelong. And so it just makes you wonder how much of what we are told is the end of the world isn't actually fixed. And a lot of it has to do with our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions. And so this book really just walks you through that process of becoming the placebo and allowing your body and your mind to heal and to manifest the actual results that you want. So highly recommend this if you are into manifestation, if you want to learn more about consciousness and just delve deep into neuroplasticity and how the things that we think about, the choices that we make, the feelings that we feel all directly impact our reality. Book number 3 is The Course of Love by Alain de Botton. I'm not sure if I'm butchering that. I probably am. So this is a novel and it's a romance novel, but the catch is it really focuses on the period after the honeymoon stage, right? So it focuses on the real life stuff that we go through and how that can eat away at our partnership, and how different things such as having children or even an affair can impact us. And so this novel is quite philosophical. I love that it's told from multiple perspectives. So there isn't really a protagonist because you are following both the husband and the wife and seeing both of their perspectives. And it's just so interesting, and it really makes you think twice when you think that your partner is misbehaving or you think that your partner is acting a certain way, but you really aren't viewing them as having their own life, as having their own story. At the end of the day, everyone is the main character in their own story. And sometimes we forget that. We forget that our partner is also experiencing stress and life and problems and struggles. And sometimes we blame ourselves, but we don't really think about the full picture. So this novel was really eye-opening. It was interesting. It's not your typical romance novel. It's really real and raw, so I highly recommend it. Next is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Now, this is a classical text. However, it is quite revolutionary, and it is very modern in the whole premise of the story. It follows a woman who is married and she has children, but she really feels out of place in this kind of path. She's not your typical mother. She's not nurturing. She's not someone who has this life of servitude. And actually, she desires independence. She desires freedom. And so in a lot of ways, this is a feminist book. This is a feminist novel. And it kind of follows just the path of a woman to reject that life of servitude, of motherhood, of being a wife, and instead taking a whole different direction. So this was quite shocking to read. It was interesting, it was intriguing, and especially the fact that it was written so long ago. It's just insane because there are so many different modern principles that are in this book. The next book that I read, I actually discovered while in Peru. I was staying at an Airbnb, and the Airbnb had a library, and I was going through the books, and this one just stood out to me. And let me just say, it was amazing. It was a 5-star read. I had never heard about it before. It's technically a self-help book, but it's just so much more than that. I loved it. It resonated with me so much, especially during that time when I was in Peru, such a spiritual place. And it really helped me to just surrender and to let go and to trust God. So this book is called The Universe Always Has a Plan: The 10 Golden Rules of Letting Go by Matt Kahn. So this book delves into topics like mindfulness, like letting go, surrender, all those good stuff. And there are practical takeaways and exercises that you can do to really implement the lessons. So absolutely recommend, love that one. The next book absolutely broke my heart, and I think it's safe to say that this author has become one of my favorite authors, Khaled Hosseini. Impeccable writing, impeccable story building, impeccable characters, like so believable, so deep, so complex. You literally feel like you are in the story. So this one is 1,000 Splendid Suns, and it talks about an unexpected friendship between two women who are actually both wives to the same man. And it is a story about a war-torn country. It is a story about survival. It is a story about resilience, about overcoming just generational curses in a way. And this story just touched me to my core. It was beautiful. It is definitely a historical fiction, but is so much more than that. And I absolutely loved it. I will definitely be reading it in the future once again. The next book actually didn't capture my attention initially. Like, it wasn't a book that I was flying through, and even like the first few chapters, I was like, is this going anywhere? Because this book has so many high 5-star reviews, but I'm glad that I stuck with it because you guys, it has become one of my favorites. So this book is called The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, and this is set during the time period of Nazi Germany, and it follows a little girl who, as you can tell by the title, she is a book thief. She loves books, she loves to learn, and it just follows her life during this devastating time period. And the really interesting thing about this book that truly sets it apart and makes it memorable is the narrator is deaf. So imagine that, like, the Grim Reaper is the one reading you this story. So it makes it very eerie, very mysterious, very unsettling. And once again, you really feel like you are there with her, living out the atrocities that are happening. So I highly recommend The Book Thief. The next one is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Wow, wow, wow. This was an amazing novel. It follows two women who grow up and their paths end up diverging. So they end up in two different areas doing two different things. But the interesting thing is that one sister lives out her true identity as a Black woman, and she is in touch with her roots, with her heritage, with her upbringing. But the other one actually begins passing off as a white woman. So you see how these two sisters have drastically different experiences, drastically different marriages, drastically different children. And wow, it is just amazing. It talks so much about identity, about race, about, honestly, the way that people are perceived and the way that people's lives unfold based on the color of their skin. So this book was very eye-opening. Absolutely loved it. And there's just so many themes of family, of belonging, of identity and race once again. So highly recommend The Vanishing Half. The next one is actually the first book in a series. I've already read 2 of the books, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on because you guys, this series has me in a chokehold. Okay, so it's the Xenogenesis series. I hope I'm not butchering that. The book that I'm mentioning in this video is called Dawn, and it is by Octavia Butler. So it basically is a woman wakes up after an apocalypse has happened on Earth, and she is now at the mercy of a species of aliens, and they have very specific plans for what they want to do moving forward. So this book was so, like, oh my gosh, the detail in this book and the world building and the description of these extraterrestrials just is so realistic. Like, Prior to this, I didn't really read many books about aliens or anything like that because I just thought, oh, they're going to be so cheesy, they're going to be so childish. But let me tell you, this series is made for adults, and I was hooked. Like, I was flying through this book. I was literally just, all of my senses felt like they could experience what this woman was going through. So, highly recommend this book. If you just want to float away and go to a different universe where you feel like you are literally in a different space-time dimension, that is the book for you. Next, we have Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Wow, 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 wow. This book was amazing. It is inspired by the life of Buddha. I don't want to necessarily say it's a retelling, but it is just all about that journey of that path to enlightenment and the different phases we go through, leaving our parents, setting off and embarking on a journey, all the detours along the way, getting caught up in materialism and capitalism and money, and then realizing that none of that actually matters, and then rejecting it, and again, searching for truth, searching for the right teacher, the right leader. I completely resonated to the different phases of this man's life and just the different things that he prioritizes or desires, and how all of those things are fleeting. And then when he really got to the core of it, he realized what truly mattered. So highly, highly recommend that. If you want a book about peace, self-discovery, wisdom, enlightenment, spirituality, any of those things, Siddhartha is the perfect book for you. And it is a very quick read. It's a short book. You're gonna get through it. It's not hard to understand. I will say though that I did read some reviews of people who read this and didn't really understand it. Personally, for me, I was hooked. I completely understood it. I got the message, but I guess for those who are not really esoteric or not really on that path, this book can kind of seem confusing or not aligned. So you check it out, you read the summary, you read a few pages and decide if it's for you. But this was definitely for me one of my favorites of all time. The next book is like the definition of experimental, of masterpiece, of something that is truly original. I have read hundreds of books and I cannot compare this novel to anything else, okay? This is called Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. The mind-boggling thing is this lady's debut novel. And when I researched her, I think she's like in her 20s. The fact that this masterpiece came out of her mind and her imagination is just inspiring. It's amazing. It's extraordinary. Like, wow, wow, wow. She is destined for great things, and I'm sure that she is going to create so many more gems. So this book is actually based, I didn't know this, on a little bit on a true story, because her mother had cancer. And this book also follows a mom, a wife who is struggling to get rid of cancer. And the interesting thing is, one of the narrators in the story is the cancer itself. So that is pretty mind-boggling, because you have the one perspective, which is the lady herself, right? The wife and the mother going through all these trials and tribulations. But then you have the perspective of the cancer and how the cancer developed and how and why the cancer is growing. And you backtrack and you hear about her childhood and her upbringing, and oh my goodness, like, I don't think that any description that I give you can truly embody what this text is. It is absolutely amazing. It really delves deep into the body, into our health, into the way that different situations in our life can manifest as disease, how certain traumas can manifest, unfortunately, as cancer. So highly, highly recommend this book. It talks about disease. It talks about human fragility. It talks about how all the things in our external world are also shaping our internal world. So really, really recommend Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. And last but not least, but definitely not one to forget, is the Clear Quran. So this is an English translation by Mustafa Khattab. Alhamdulillah, proud to say that I have finally read the Quran. I have spent months devouring this book, journaling, really sitting with the chapters, the verses, to get to know God, to get to know myself, to get to know the journey of what it means to be a devout believer, to have faith. And let me just say that whatever religion it is that you believe in, reading the actual text, reading the text, whether it's the Bible if you're a Christian or Catholic, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita if you're Hindu, it doesn't matter. But these texts can really help guide us. They can help really shine light as to what's important, as to what matters, as to what it means to be a good human, a good daughter, a good sister, a good wife, a good leader. There is no self-help book or any book out there that compares to this book. And I might be biased, but let me just say that reading this book transformed my life, elevated my life. And I am just so grateful that I finally took the time. I finally committed to it. That was a goal of mine in 2024, was to finally read the Quran. And let me just say, it happened in divine time. I'm so grateful. I know I'm a mess. I can't even speak right now. If you are Muslim and if you want an easy guide to follow, to look to as a reference, to inspire you, to just fill you with a sense of awe, with a sense of peace, with a sense of just God's glory, then this is the book for you. I look forward every single night to reading my Quran, to journaling, about it. I loved having conversations and discussions with my husband about it, with my mother, and it's just really, I feel like, completed me in every single shape, way, and form. So that wraps up all of my favorite books from 2024. I would love it if you commented down below what your favorite book was from 2024, or even if you just comment down some of your all-time favorites, some of your 5-star reads, because I'm always searching for that next best book. I love you guys so much. I thank you for being here. Give this video a thumbs up if you found value. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.